Prolonged fasting is so beneficial for your immune system, for getting rid of cancer, for brain health, for anti-aging. But there's one aspect of prolonged fasting that is fairly dangerous. Okay, you could potentially die, and I need to make you aware of this. So it's called refeeding syndrome. What is that? That's a situation where at the end of this prolonged fast, let's say you fasted for 4 days, you eat too much, too fast, and the wrong foods. Okay, that could be the problem. But before I get into this, I do want to point out something. This usually involves someone who has malnutrition, someone who maybe has an eating disorder, someone who is an alcoholic, someone who maybe has been a diabetic type 1 for a long period of time, or someone who has been starving, okay, which is different than a prolonged fast. But if you are following my recommendations, the risks of you having this problem are very, very low because you're not going into this having malnutrition. I always recommend when you do fasting, any type of fasting, that you at least, as a bare minimum, take electrolytes and number 2, B vitamins. Because a lot of studies indicate people who have this syndrome usually have really poor nutritional reserves. But I don't know your situation. I don't know how your diet has been in the past. I don't know what you're taking. So this video is very, very important for everyone who is prolonged fasting. Other than dying, you could potentially get a coma, seizures, convulsions. But again, these things are rare. So here's what happens in this situation. You go into a long-term fast. Let's say it's 3, 4, 5 days or longer. Now, typically, if you check the blood, the person's going to be fine. They're not going to have any deficiencies of minerals, electrolytes, or any of these things, right? But you have to realize that the great, great majority of certain minerals like potassium, magnesium, phosphorus are inside the cell, not in the blood. So like 95 to 98% of those minerals are inside the cell. So as you're doing fasting, okay, the body's going to be releasing all these minerals or electrolytes from the cell into the blood to keep them at a certain level. That's your body's stable kind of reference point. Always keep the blood normal, despite pulling nutrients from the cells, from your bone, from your muscles. So when you get a blood test for these electrolytes or nutrients, you're not actually testing the inside of your cells, the intracellular. You're checking the extracellular nutrients, right, in your blood. So you're not going to really know what's happening inside the cell unless you do an intracellular test. But if you're fasting for any period of time, a lot of these nutrients don't get stored for a long period of time. A lot of them aren't fat soluble, okay? They're water soluble. So you may find in a period of time they can go down pretty fast, especially if when you eat, your diet has been poor in the past, or you don't focus on getting nutrient-dense foods. Then you decide, you know what, I hear all these great things about doing a prolonged fast. I'm going to do a 4 or 5 day fast. You do the fast, you don't take your electrolytes, you don't take your B vitamins, and then it's time to eat, okay? And you just pig out. You start eating all sorts of things and lots of things like carbohydrates, sugar, whatever. At this point, you can develop what's called the refeeding syndrome, okay? And what is happening is you're very quickly raising insulin, not to mention being on that 4 or 5 day fast, your insulin sensitivity has become extremely sensitive. Those receptors are ready to pull in these nutrients from your blood very quickly. And what happens is you have this rapid shift of electrolytes, specifically phosphorus. That's the big one. Potassium and magnesium, sometimes calcium. Okay. And all of this shifts from the blood to the inside of your cell to replace what's missing. And you end up with extremely low electrolytes in the blood. And this is what puts the stress on the heart. Okay. And this is what also can increase edema and swelling because you have this imbalance. You see, when you're fasting, you have very low insulin because when you have low insulin, you actually get rid of a lot of fluid and sodium. And with some people, it could be 11, 20 pounds, 30 pounds of fluid. Okay. It's a lot. But when you start eating, okay, and your insulin starts going up, you start retaining sodium as well. So this is where you can get some edema as well. So all of a sudden you start holding fluid and you're like, what is going on here? And on top of that, if you're eating a lot of carbs, these carbs are going to be converted into glycogen. And glycogen needs potassium to store this sugar. So you're going to use up a lot of this potassium from the food you eat. And not to mention all this shift from the blood into the cells, you end up with a very low level of potassium. You're also going to be storing fat as well as protein. And both of those macronutrients need vitamins and minerals as well. So you deplete those. And you also deplete vitamin B1 in a big way when you do carbs. The metabolism of carbs requires B1 as the cofactor. And so anytime you eat carbs, you just deplete your B1 big time. And one of the big symptoms from a B1 deficiency is memory loss, okay? And that can create confusion, it could create anxiety, and a whole host of other issues that relate from all the way over here from neurological problems to heart problems. And so that's the simplicity of what the refeeding syndrome is. So how do we prevent this problem from happening? Well, make sure, number one, when you're eating, you're doing the healthy version of the ketogenic diet. You're doing nutrient-dense foods. Number two, take electrolytes and the B vitamins as a bare minimum while you're fasting. It might also be good to take other things too, like cod liver oil to get your fat-soluble vitamins as well as your omega-3 fatty acids. It might be also good to take vitamin D and vitamin K2, as well as some trace minerals. And that way you're not going to have malnutrition, okay? So it's going to help you. And when you introduce food, you go slowly. I'm talking about maybe an egg, okay? And you wait a couple hours and you eat something else. Maybe you have a little bit of soup, okay? Wait a couple more hours and do, I don't know, some sauerkraut, okay? And then wait a little bit and do a little bit of nuts. So that first day, you don't want to do more than like half of your normal calories, okay? So let's say you're doing 1,000 calories on the first day. And then you slowly increase food the next several days. Now, this all depends on how long that you fast. If you fasted for a long period of time, let's say you fasted for 21 days or 30 days, well, you're going to go even slower than if you fasted for 3 or 4 days. Now, just realize that when you're doing intermittent fasting, like say 1 meal a day, you don't have to worry about this, okay? I'm talking about when you fast for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. So now that you know the dangers and how to prevent this refeeding syndrome, the next thing to really wrap your wits around is the benefits of prolonged fasting. So I put that video up right here. Check it out.